All right, so good evening, everyone. I am Nada El Hussein. I am the Education and Public Engagement Manager at Sheikh Abdullah Salim Cultural Center. We are very happy to see you, some of you again, and all the new people, welcome. We have a series of workshops that are dedicated for teachers and educators. We are trying to support them as much as possible as they move to online education. So tonight we are very pleased to host Dr. Shireen Hamadeh. Dr. Shireen has a doctorate in educational research from the University of Bath. She has been working in education for over 10 years. She started as a teacher from grade 4, and then she taught university after that. So she's been through all the stages of education. She can understand all of your struggles and challenges. She also taught from math to science, right? So she's been through many fields. Later, she progressed onto teacher training, and she worked with the Ministry of Education in Qatar. Currently, she is a Director of Academic and Student Affairs at University Foundation College in Qatar, which is a post-16 educational institute. It provides the pre-master's programs and UK Foundation year for students. Despite her role in management, Shireen continues to consult, provide training sessions, and teach at least a few hours a year. She always likes to stay in the classroom so she can remain conscious of the realities teachers face on a day-to-day basis. So welcome, Shireen, and thank you so much for offering this workshop for our teachers. All yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Nada. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Hopefully you guys will benefit from this workshop. So this workshop is going to be about differentiation in a virtual classroom. You already introduced me well enough. I also told Nada, please don't post a picture because it's kind of far from reality. So here's a picture of me from 10 years ago, 15 kilos ago. So like she had said, I did work in education for the past 10 plus years. I'm now in Qatar. Just like I was telling Tada, I grew up in California, but moved to the Gulf after graduation. I've taught math and sciences mainly. I started off my career as an elementary school educator. I taught 4th grade and then moved on to secondary and then higher education. Okay, so since I introduced myself, I'd like to know the people who are here. So if possible, can I get you guys, you can use your phones for this. If you can go to paulev.com/ this link right here. I think Nada can share it in the chat, so you can just click on it to be easy. I'd like to know what age group you guys teach.
The link is in the chat. Please click on it, and then you can answer the question, please. Okay, we go back.
Okay, so it looks like we have a good range other than higher education. So we have a good range of educators here. We have some people in K through 6, and you guys can see how it's changing as people answer. Okay, so what we can see is that we have K through 6, we've got 7 to 12, and we've got some people who are in other, maybe they're in management or they're working in some other field. Okay, so we continue. What I'm assuming now, most of the people in Kuwait, you guys are using virtual classrooms now. Everything is online. It's different than what we have in Qatar. In Qatar, we are doing we're doing blended learning, a blended learning model. So half of our lessons are online, and the other half are actually face-to-face in very, very small groups. So I know you guys are doing completely online, and I'm sure you have a platform also that you guys are using. So we've got some Google Classrooms. Others, so I'm guessing maybe Zoom.
government schools are using MS Teams.
Okay. So the institute where I work, we also use MS Teams. I have used Google Classroom in the past. It's just a matter of what you get used to. I think they have some similar resources. That'd be interesting to know what the others are.
If you can write for us in the chat, what is the other? It's Zoom plus Google Classroom.
Oh, okay. So just like a mixture of things. Okay. One thing that I found was that some educational institutes were using a mixture of things when it wasn't really necessary. So for example, they were using MS Teams, and then they were using a website to upload resources, and then they were using what was a Class Dojo to give feedback. And if in reality, they could have done all of that stuff under one platform. So I think it's one thing that's very important is if they know the full usage of their of the platform that they have. Okay, so this is very interesting. I think we've got Google Classroom, a lot of them. We don't have anyone using MS Teams so far. Carry on to the next question. Oh, we do have someone with MS Teams. That's good. Okay, how are you teaching online? Are you teaching synchronously, asynchronously, or both? Okay, and just for the people who may not have heard of this terminology before, synchronously is if you are teaching at the same time, so you have live sessions. Asynchronously is if they're not live sessions. You just upload resources, they download their materials, they upload their materials when they've done them. Or you're doing a mixture of synchronous and asynchronous. I'm guessing some of the people who voted A may not have seen the third option of both, because I think a lot of places are doing a mixture. And I know some places are saying you must do synchronous teaching. Okay. Just gonna wait for a few more people to respond and then we'll move on. Hey, that's very interesting. Okay, so for today's discussion, what we're going to do, so it gave me a good idea of kind of the backgrounds that you guys have. We're going to talk about what is differentiation. We hear about it a lot in education, but how much are we actually applying it? Types of differentiation. We're going to be talking about what we differentiate according to, examples of differentiation, and we're going to do practice application on how to actually implement it, answering some questions. I'll share some sources and some resources for you guys. So just an objective for this workshop hopefully is we'll be able to apply various differentiation strategies during your online sessions in order to differentiate lessons according to the many differences among a group of students. Okay, so try this one. What comes to mind when you think of differentiation? What's the first thing that you guys think of? So the same link.
We are trying to use this Poll EV as much as possible. It's a tool that teachers also can use in their classroom. So please don't think it's a waste of time. It's just getting you to get used to it. Anyone can use it and it's free, right, Shireen?
Yes, it is. It is very useful in classrooms, especially online, to make sure students are on board. So I'm showing you the different ways that you can use it. You can have open-ended questions, closed questions, this type of word wall, brainstorming. So when you think of differentiation, we've got rate, change, diversity, customized. That's nice, yeah. Different students. Different activities, levels, needs, that's an important one. Okay, so yeah, so we have some very good examples here about learners' needs, their styles, the consideration, customized. So yes, these are some important aspects of differentiation. Okay, so what is differentiation? What does it actually mean to differentiate? So differentiation is an instructional approach. It helps teachers teach with individuals as well as content in mind. This is a quote by Tomlinson, Carol Ann Tomlinson. She's kind of the grandmother of differentiation. So she has written most of the pieces about differentiation. She has written a lot of books, and I'll share some of the resources. So it's about making sure that all students are kept in mind while you are teaching. So why did I put a picture of a mountain, people climbing a mountain? Well, the thing with differentiation is that we need to make sure that all students are eventually reaching the same point. So we need to get all of these students to the top of the mountain. Okay, some students are going to need more support than others. So some students are going to need maybe a walking stick. Some students are going to need maybe a little bit of help, a little bit of support. But in the end, we need to get them all to the top of this mountain. Okay, so some things to keep in mind. Differentiation, it's not the same as accommodation. So accommodation, it is where you've got students with special needs, for example. For example, if we have a student who is blind and they may need, or they're visually impaired, not completely blind, they may need bigger paper. That might be an accommodation that we need to make. Differentiation is not the same as that. Differentiation, it's used to benefit all students from those struggling to those advanced. One of the big issues is that a lot of the time we forget those students. We forget the students who are advanced and who are gifted when we're thinking about differentiation, and we just focus on how to support the students who are weaker in the classroom. So when we want to really think about differentiation, we want to make sure that we are supporting students who are both at the bottom and at the very top, and all of those people in between. So types of differentiation. So how do we differentiate? Where do we differentiate in the classroom? The first thing that's very important, I think that's the first thing that comes to mind, is content. So we differentiate the content that we're teaching. But like I said before, we're not changing the content or the standards. So differentiation, it's not about lowering the standards and then some students only need to reach this point while the other advanced students can reach that point. We want all of the students to reach the exact same point eventually. We can differentiate the process. So how students are actually going to be, how they're going to be learning, the activities they're going to be doing. Okay. We can also differentiate the product. So what students are producing. I don't know if anyone's read Tomlinson's book. She does talk about a fourth one. So the fourth thing that she talks about, I don't know, has anyone read it? They can type it in, they can share it if they want. Okay. It's the learning environment. So the learning environment is something that she talks about that you can differentiate in her book, but we will not discuss that because right now the learning environment is mostly going to be online. So she talks about how some students, they like to work outdoors. Some students like to work in a quiet room. Some students like to work in a busy atmosphere. So we're going to focus on these three from Tomlinson's theory: content, process, and product. Now, are they able to ask questions if they want, and they can?
Yes, anyone who has a question, please type it in the chat and we can try and answer it as soon as possible.
Yeah, please. Okay, so I don't want anyone to have to wait till the end or anything. If they have anything they'd like to share, please feel free to do so.
And you can also unmute yourself if you have something to say.
Okay, that'll be perfect, yeah. Okay, so we differentiate according to students' what? So let's get some of your feedback there. Okay, so in the end, I have the links to the author and I have the links to the books that we were talking about. So someone has asked, what is the book or author you were referring to? So it's Carol Ann Tomlinson, and I'll share the links at the end of this PowerPoint. Okay, aptitude, learning styles, successes, needs, levels. This is really good. Behavior, I like that. Native language, that's a really important one. I was hoping someone would write that. Because if you do read those books that originate from the West, you see that they kind of sometimes forget these things. They forget that we've got ESL learners, we've got students who are learning in another language. So that is something as us in the Gulf, teaching in the Gulf, we need to focus on this. We'll give it a few more seconds, see if anyone else wants to add. Intelligence, interesting. The different types of intelligence, possibly.
We have a question from Yasmin in the chat, if you want to read it.
Just how all students reach the same endpoint. Students' knowledge is already ahead of the rest. Okay, so how to get them all to reach the same endpoint. So it depends on the kind of standard that's set. So if students should be able to paraphrase, for example, it could be the different text that you're giving the student. So you can get the student to paraphrase a small text, and you can get the student to paraphrase a very advanced text. So just kind of pushing the students, they're still reaching the same, they're still learning about paraphrasing. You can just get the student who is more advanced to get a more difficult text that they can work on. So a lot of the time it's just really unpacking those standards, understanding what kind of objectives can come from those standards, and then getting students to reach it and reach a little bit beyond. So it is a challenge. So sometimes if you're doing maths, for example, some students already know how to do the mathematical calculations. So what do you do to get the students who are advanced actually challenged? So you might take it up a notch for them. Get more examples, word problems, practical applications, and things like that. So yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you, Yasmin. Okay, so we've got some excellent one. Learning disabilities, intelligence, native language level, and target. These are excellent. Okay. So in general, in Tomlinson's book, she summarizes these different things into 3. There's kind of a lag here. So she said we differentiate according to students' readiness. How ready are they for the material? So their basic knowledge, the background knowledge that they've got. Their English ability, so their native language, are they English natives? Can they speak in English properly? Can they read it? And then well, maybe that they're very advanced at English. So you're teaching, let's say, a history lesson. And then you've got some students who are going to be reading through that text in 10 minutes, and you've got other students who it's going to take them maybe over an hour to read the text. So you got to differentiate for the different English abilities. Interests, so we need to differentiate the students' interests. When we're teaching something, a lot of teachers, we tend to focus on our own interests. So we put examples from things that inspire us and that interest us. So a lot of the time we need to find out what interests our students, what do they want to continue with, and we try to differentiate the instruction according to their interests so we can engage students. And their learning profiles. This is what a lot of you guys also mentioned. Their learning styles, their preferences, their intelligences, multiple intelligences, the way that they prefer to learn, they prefer to take in the content. I'm sure a lot of people have started hearing about, they're starting to call it the myth of learning styles. Okay? Doesn't mean that learning styles don't exist, that it's just that what they used to think was that if you were auditory learner, that's the only way you could learn. And if you learned another way, you wouldn't learn. So no, it's more like a learning preference. So if you like to listen to things or you like to be a visual learner, it's a preference. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a learning style. So there are students who have different preferences. They like to watch videos versus they like to listen to things, they like to read things. And even us as adults, we can say, well, I learned this way better than I learned that way. Okay, so how can we differentiate content? Okay, so we want to be able to differentiate content. So as someone who has a math background, you're teaching how to add or subtract fractions. So let's say this was the first example, okay? The content means what students learn in order to realize an objective. What do students learn in order to realize? So we've got the objective. I need to make sure the whole class can add and subtract fractions, but what can students, what gaps might there be for students to be able to realize how to add or subtract fractions? So some students may not be ready. You might go in and you've taught them how to add and subtract, but they don't know how to reduce the fraction at the end. Okay, so one thing that you can do, you can provide extra live lessons on reducing fractions in small synchronous online sessions. So this is something back in the institute that I'm working on that we used to do. So we used to say, okay, we've got synchronous lessons just for these 5 students. So these students don't know how to reduce fractions. I'm going to reteach reducing fractions, but not everyone needs to be there. So the students who I know need this extra support, I can pull them into that session. The 5 of them, we can figure out a time to do it where we're all available, and we can I can reteach that area to make sure those students, that gap is filled for all of those students. Okay. Another one is interests. Maybe the examples that I'm talking about sports. This person ran a mile and this person ran a kilometer, and you know, it's all sports related. A lot of the time we need to be able to differentiate between different interests. So for example, if I'm in that class, it may be something that I want to talk about a pizza, okay? Or I want to talk about a pie. Don't talk to me about sports. That's the last thing I want to have on my mind. Okay? And the last one is learning profile. So you can have a pre-recorded video which explains the content. And a lot of the time when we're working online, I'm done. I made the PowerPoint, it's there, they just need to listen to it, and I'm finished with the material, with the content that I want to give the students. But you could do more. You can put in that book page. You can put in that text that will help explain to the student the material in a lot more detail. Okay, so having multiple methods to support those students who need the extra push. An example of the second one, differentiating process. So how can you differentiate process? So you're teaching how to add or subtract fractions, and I want to differentiate the process of learning or the activities students are going to be doing. So it's how students learn the content. And again, we want to differentiate the process based on their readiness, their interests, and their learning profile. So the same 3 things. So a way to do this. Readiness, asking questions of varying abilities. So questioning is a very important a thing that you can implement within your classes. So during live sessions, you could have various questions. You ask maybe the lower level questions. You'll ask some evaluative, some analytical questions. Getting the range of questioning into that so that the process of learning is reaching the students who are maybe at the very beginning, they just need to be able to define, and then getting students to evaluate what you are asking. Okay. Breakout rooms, we're going to talk about this as well for differentiation, and we're going to actually practice it ourselves. This can be a very, very crucial tool for you guys to use also in your classes. Interests, have students use a OneNote student notebook if you're in MS Teams. You can do the same thing with Google Documents. You can have them create reflective journals. This is a very powerful tool. So if each student in the classroom has a reflective journal, it allows them to put their own interests in. So I could be doing, okay, add or subtract fractions, create your notes page. Okay? And you give me an example to explain this. Pretend you're explaining to another group of students. And then they might come in and they might give you an example with the sports, or they might come in and they might give you the example with the pizza instead. And then you'll you'll be able to assess what really interests these students. Okay? Or it might be that they're interested in cooking, or they might be interested in medicine. Okay? And learning profile. So Nearpod is another one that we're going to practice to add a video with questions of various abilities. So when you are showing them a video, you can add questions, formative questions to those videos to allow these students to answer and to kind of interact with the video. So they're not just sitting down passively watching the video. A lot of the times I tell my students, did you forget your popcorn? Because they're just sitting there. Okay? But it's not supposed to be a cinema. It's supposed to be a learning activity when you're putting the video there. So Nearpod really helps with that. And the last one is differentiating product. Okay? So with differentiating product, it's how students show what they have learned. Okay? This is a difficult one, and I'm going to be very honest, especially with some curriculums where they force you, the only product that you can use for your students, that you can assess students, especially in secondary, they have to take that final exam. So it doesn't really give you as a teacher as much leeway to be able to create the product that you want. So I do know the realities of this. But in elementary school classrooms, for example, even in formative assessments, you can decide what those formative assessments are, where students are going to be building their confidence levels. They're going to be able to show you that they do understand in their own way. So how we can do that? Okay? We can have various methods of assessments. So again, based on readiness, quizzes and tests, making sure they assess all level of Bloom's taxonomy. So we can have them just defining something, and then we can have them in the end creating their own continuation of the story that they were reading. So creation. Interests. So you might give them a choice. Allow students to create videos, allow them to use animations, to create their own animations. You'd be really surprised at the abilities of students to actually use technology. I mean, I have a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old child, and I was pretending that I'm teaching them how to use their tablets and their MS Teams. Within 10 minutes, they were teaching me things on MS Teams. And this is 5- and 6-year-olds. So they can actually, they're far more capable than any of us in technology. And learning profile. You've got students who like to work individually, and you've got students who like to work in groups. And sometimes it's okay to give students the ability to choose if they want to work individually or they want to work with other individuals. So allowing students to have that choice and how they're going to be assessed, allowing them to be assessed in a variety of different ways, really prepares them for life later on and prepares them with the confidence needed. I haven't taken an exam since I graduated, I think, college. So life is not about examinations and sitting down, and that's a whole nother topic. But I'm a big proponent of different types of assessments and product producing. Okay, so what we're gonna do now, a lot of me talking. So now we're gonna have you guys break out into your rooms. Sorry, we think we have someone who has a question. Okay, we're gonna have you guys break out into your, yes, okay, can we use Google Form or Google Slide for a reflective journal? Yes, I think there's Google Documents. That would be a good one to have. So each student can create a Google document and they can create their own reflective journal. After every lesson, make them summarize it. It could be their math notebook. It can just be a Google document of math notebook. You can access it whenever they want to whenever they are working on it. And it's a dynamic document. So after every lesson, you see how they're adding to it, what they're adding to it. You can add your own comments to it. So Google Documents does allow you to do that very, very well. Okay, so what we're gonna do, since you mentioned Google Slides, we're gonna use Google Slides. I'm gonna have you guys in breakout rooms. We've got 5 different slides. Okay. I think Ms. Neda will help us get everyone into a specific room. And then you'll be assigned a group 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And each one of these slides has a different question. So I want to get your feedback and your ideas on how you can differentiate according to that question that's there. So Neda, are you able to separate them into their groups?
Yes, I'm working on it. Just a
second. Okay, great. No problem.
Yeah.
So we'll have around 10 minutes to have everyone just discuss, kind of type in some ideas, and then we will be able to have each slide shared. So it is going to be on the Google slide. Okay, that was really, really interesting. And it was really nice getting to know everybody. So thank you for that. If we can go through now the Google slides, let me share my screen. So if you're using Google Slides with your classrooms and you're doing an activity like this, we won't see anonymous crocodile and cheetah. You'll end up seeing your actual student's name based on their usernames So it would be, we can go through these one by one now. We can slideshow, present it. Nada, can they unmute themselves so one person in the group can speak about how they would answer this?
Yes, definitely. Please, whenever we open a slide, for example, for group 1, is there anyone ready to share with us what you discussed during your breakout room?
Yeah,
so
we can.
on slide 1. I don't think we can see it in presentation mode.
You guys are still not seeing it?
No.
We can see it, but not in presentation mode.
Oh. Oh, my screen it is. Okay, let me see if I can make it full screen. Okay, is that better?
No.
No.
Still?
Okay, just go to slide 2. Click on slide 2, like the second slide, and then we can see it on the screen. We also have the link, so we can go to it and see it ourselves. Just click on slide.
I think it's gonna work now. I think I got it.
Yes, thank you.
It's working? You got it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
All right, so I was in group 1 with both Shadi and Abir. And we got that if we are teaching a history class about World War I and we found out that the students were struggling with English, how would we differentiate the content? So first, we're going to try to link it to geographically to where they are. So we could like almost link, you know, bring it closer to home for them. We go chronologically and by significant events by using timelines and using visual aids such as videos and pictures for the script. And finally, do our best to simplify the taught language and focus on keywords for these students.
Okay, that's really good. So keywords is a really important one. Possibly having the videos with subtitles. Those are really good methods to make sure the students are struggling with English, get that differentiation that they may need. Okay, so we'll go on to group 2. Who was in group 2?
Yes, hi everyone. I was in group 2 with Hiba and Dana. We agreed that using Flipgrid app to record what the students understood already without writing can help them to differentiate the product. We differentiate also the assessments according to their English level. For example, we can give like a study for advanced English and vocab list or straightforward questions for the ones who are struggling. Somebody wrote that they could use TISO to draw and the use of creative videos.
Okay, I really like this. So for this one, we can focus on what the goal is. The goal is for them to understand what World War I, about the events of World War I. So it doesn't have to be write an essay for the whole class. It could be, I really like these ones, getting them to record record what they have learned in their own spoken English. So these are some very interesting methods.
Thank you.
Group 3. So I placed all the science teachers in group 1 and 2, and then the non-science teachers were doing the science lesson. So let's see how they did. Okay, who was in group 3?
No one would like to share from group 3? All right, maybe we can read them ourselves.
Okay, we'll read these ones. From group 3, how would you differentiate the content according to the students' learning profiles if you are teaching an online lesson on the difference between solid, liquid, and gas? So this is the content, so what they're going to be learning. So visual was one way they mentioned. So I remember working with this group. They can actually see it in real life, or they can, they talked about having it live. So during the live synchronous session, bringing them solids, bringing them liquids, and bringing them gases so that they can actually see it in front of them and they can see the differences between those three. Doing it as a chart or a map in case they prefer hearing over visual as well. So they can see things in the form of charts. That could be one way also to, for different types of students to do that. Other than just, for example, texts. So some students, they prefer just to read. So what sometimes some teachers do is they just place the text there and then everyone reads about the difference between solid, liquid, and gas. Well, now we just came up with 3 different ways you can actually have students with different needs who can't just read a sentence and learn it, who need to see it in front of them. They can learn in this way. Yeah, that's really good. Last one. Oh, nice. They have pictures on here.
God, our slide is all over the place. It looks so much better here.
That's not how we arranged it.
There you go. There you go. That's how it actually should look.
Okay, close enough.
Reality. Oh wow! I just destroyed my entire desk just to do that. You want to talk? Who wants to jump in?
Go on, Tariq, I'll give you the honor.
Thank you. Thank you. So we discussed a couple different ways that students can learn about solids, liquids, and gas. The first one was to build a model to compare how the particles are placed according to their state of matter. You can see some of the pictures display that idea of solid being tightly packed together, liquid being separated slightly, and gas being extremely diffuse. So devise a demonstration or video to show states of matter, as in a teapot boiling or ice in a freezer. So the students can actually see the teacher or another student doing exactly that, looking at the different states of matter. Simulation tools might help. So off the top of my head, I know you could use like Mathematica to simulate some of those things, or you could use some of the other like GeoGebra to simulate some of those states of matter. We also do diagrams for visual learners and use magnetic tools for tactile learners. So you have different kinds of approaches towards their learning styles. And also you should always include assignment for the students so they can get a hands-on feel for it, like a project showing different states of matter, videos they can submit showing what's a solid, what's a liquid, what's a gas, and just as long as the gases are all appropriate gases.
Okay, that's really good. So I like how you had the students who like to do things by hand and actually make things. So, and having them create videos, because this generation is kind of obsessed with making YouTube tutorials. So let them create a YouTube tutorial on something that kind of matters more than makeup. So this is an excellent approach. I really like that. Thank you. Okay, so I think that was the last one. And then this last one was about paraphrasing, which is pretty good because I kind of mentioned it during the presentation. So thank you very much for that. I'll go back to my presentation. Okay, so hints for successful differentiation. So before you can actually differentiate a lesson, you need to know who your students are. And that's the most important part of teaching. And I cannot imagine how hard that must have been for teachers this year in Kuwait who had to start teaching online right away. So with us, we're doing blended learning. That means we actually get to know the students face to face before we have to go online and then figure out their needs and then figure out their interests. So we actually have that personal touch, but you guys were able to do this directly online. So that is really impressive. So how can you do that? How can you get to know them? Some interesting resources you could use. You can use Poll Everywhere. Okay? That's what I was showing you guys about the polls. Kahoots, also they ask you for, this is Kahoots, I'm sure most teachers have used it. It's an interactive method also to get formative assessments there, and they can be used both synchronously or asynchronously. Google Forms or Microsoft Forms, you can create mini surveys or mini quizzes, get students to talk about what their interests are, and allow for personal notebooks or reflective journals using the Google Docs or the OneNote in Microsoft. So this is a good way to also figure out what interests these students. Another way is face-to-face, have one-on-one sessions with them online, get to know them, get that personal connection with these students. So they become not just faces behind the screen, they become people that you actually know, and you know what they like and you know what interests them. Okay, some other, I know we're running out of time, so some other things that I wanted to talk about was Nearpod. This is a very interesting tool that you guys can use. It allows you to upload, I'm going to show you it on it. It allows you to upload a video. See if you guys can see it. Can you guys see the Nearpod one? So what students would get, they would get a code. It would be join.nearpod.com, and they would get the code right here. Upload any video.
Nearpod. With Nearpod, you can make.
Okay, so you would be able to upload anything from YouTube. You put it on your Nearpod. This is also free. The teacher version is free. The school can get a bigger version of it. And then go through the video. You would be able to put in the code and get this question. So they would be able to start activity. And then, for example, what does the word collaborative mean? Okay, so they can't continue on to the YouTube video unless they find out what the word collaborative means. And you find out how many students are answering correctly, how many students are answering incorrectly. So it kind of helps you figure out, was this video too high level for my students? Was it low, or was it just right for my students? And what more might they need? I know some people are writing in chats. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so this is a link for Nearpod. To continue onto the PowerPoint. Sorry, I wanted to be able to show you guys this and go through the whole video, and there's several questions I've embedded, but I think you guys got the idea, and it's very, very easy to do. It just takes a few minutes. Any YouTube video can be uploaded. Okay, so these are the sources. Someone was asking me what books were you referring to. It's this one right here. It's Tomlinson. She talks about differentiation in practice through grades 9 through 12. She talks about differentiation for gifted and talented students. She's written a lot of books. So not just for 9 to 12, she has one on elementary school. And I wanted to differentiate my resources, so I added here a YouTube channel of her speaking in case some people are more auditory and they don't like to read. Someone mentioned Edpuzzle as well, if we like to upload video and ask questions. So yes, those are also some very interesting tools. Okay, and some people are actually using Nearpod in their classes. That's excellent. So I hope that it's a useful resource for the teachers who are actually using it. They have good feedback about it. So here's some other things that you can use. Kahoots, Kids A to Z for elementary school teachers. This is kind of, you can use it as an activity, or you can use it as a product or as an assessment, where students start reading at a certain level. When they get to the next book, it gets harder and harder with the students. So you get students reading, their homework is to read, but they're reading something that's based on their own level. Poll Everywhere, this is what I was using for this PowerPoint presentation, and Nearpod. And if you guys have any questions that you want to ask, please, this is my email address. Feel free to ask me anything. I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate everyone who came here. And I think I made it right on time.
By the way, guys, if we are going to be sending you attendance certificates, if any one of you would like to receive one and they did not register through our form, you can send me your email specifically to the host. Send your email address and I will send you the attendance certificate there. Also, Shireen will be sharing all of her slides with us. I will be emailing those to you also later on after the workshop. I would like to thank you so much, Shireen, for being with us tonight. By the way, if you noticed, Shireen is a bit full because she's in her 9th month and she just entered it like 2 days ago. So we were really worried about this workshop. We were worried that the baby would surprise us and we wouldn't be able to do it. So we really wish you a safe delivery.
Thank you
for your time tonight. If there are any
Thank
questions,
you, everyone.
We are happy to take them. Otherwise, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, everyone. I'm reading the messages also, so thank you. I really appreciate it.